Olá, pessoal. Sejam bem-vindos e bem-vindas ao nosso webinar para o lançamento e publicação do Sistema Education Hub, Educação Científica nas Escolas, Conexão entre Brasil e Reino Unido. Eu sou Arthur Galamba, eu trabalho para o King's College London, eu trabalho com formação de professores e junto com
on teacher education, and with André Michelazzi, we organize and run our STEM Education Hub here in the UK in partnership with British Council Brazil. I'm going to be the mediator of this panel. And those of you who cannot see me, I am a white 45-year-old man. I have gray hair. I have gray beard, grayer than I wish. My background is blurry because of a zoom filter so that nobody can see what is behind me, but I am home and you can see that there is a guitar on my right-hand side. I would also like to see that we are here with the participation of the organization of Punto, which is the production that organized this event. I would also like to thank our friends and colleagues from British Council who are our partners in this project. They are at the STEM Education Hub for 2 years, and I would like to also thank the interpreters of this event. I would obviously like to thank all of the authors of this book that we're going to launch today, who somehow participated in this in several different events in the last 2 years, either in the UK or in Brazil, and who made the STEM Education Hub happen. Without them, the hub would not exist. Without their engagement and without their willingness to help and to make partnerships with colleagues from Brazil and the UK. So I would like to help you, to thank you a lot. And thank you especially for letting us use your presentations in the past events. I believe you also understand that this will be very helpful for teachers in Brazil and the UK. This book is bilingual, and it is a very rare book in the market. There are not so many bilingual books in the market. I would like to remind everyone who's listening to us, that this event is also bilingual. We have simultaneous translation in English and into Portuguese, and you can select in which language you would like to listen to the presentations. You just have to click on the lower to an icon of a globe on the lower toolbar, and you can choose in which language you would like to listen to these presentations. Today, we're going to have the launch of the publication STEM Education Hub, Scientific Education in Schools. If you don't know the acronym STEM, it is an acronym in English that means science, technology, education, and math. It has the purpose of bringing value of different cultures to schools and different ways of relating to nature and education center in the scientific knowledge. Today, we're going to have the participation of Alessandra Moura, Jussara Almeida Bezerra, director of the municipal school José dos Campos. We're going to have Ronaldo Christofoletti from the Department of Sciences of the Sea in the University of São Paulo, UNIFESP. Ana Carolina de Souza Gonzalez, researcher of Fio Cruz. Anita Benite from the University of Goiás, and Janice Ansine, manager of senior projects of the Open University in the United States. Correcting, the acronym STEM stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics. And now I would like to invite Alessandra Moura to give you her warm welcome. Thank you, Arthur. Good morning to everyone who is connecting from Brazil. Good afternoon to our friends who are in the United Kingdom. Janice is connecting with us from Jamaica. This marks the heart of the partnership between Education Hubs and King's College London. My name is Alessandra Moura. I am a manager of the English area at British Council Brazil. If you cannot see me, I am a woman with white skin, brown hair. I'm wearing an orange shirt, and I have the background of British Council. It's a pleasure to be in another event of STEM Education Hub. And this is a celebration of all that we built in these almost 2 years of project. We're going to include in this publication, which is a different publication, it is bilingual, as Arthur said. It was built in 2 languages, in Portuguese and English. It is an international collaboration. We're going to focus in our publication in culture and citizenship science, collaboration in research institutes. It is a moment of celebration for British Council, which is the institution of international collaboration for the United Kingdom. We have relationships of trust and a lot of collaboration in the fields of art, culture, and basic education, higher education, science. We're present in over 100 countries. Only in Brazil, we have been here for 68 years. And to talk about the differences in our publication, you who are here on this webinar, you're going to receive it firsthand on the first week of June. This is going to be a publication that will be handed out as an ebook. It can be read on digital readers, and it'll bring a lot of different accessibility tools. It can be read, it can be heard, it can be watched. There's a lot of integrations and different interactivities. We hope that a lot of educators and a lot of different teachers read our book or listen to our book as a podcast while commuting to school. It can be something that can be watched at home while eating popcorn during your free time. And it can be read as books are traditionally read. So I celebrate with you this format, this different format, maybe innovative format of this ebook that you're going to receive. And you're also going to receive the 2 versions. The first version is going to be delivered in the beginning of June as a regular PDF. And at the end of June, you're going to receive the second version, which is this interactive version. So I thank you all for your presence, especially the guests that Arthur already presented. These are educators of educators. These are professors that have gathered to share with you some inspirations that were valuable in their experience, and we believe that they will be interesting and valuable for all of the readers of this ebook. It's a pleasure. And Arthur, I pass the floor back to you so we can start. Thank you very much, Alessandra. Now we would like to pass the floor to our dear authors because there's nothing better than listening to what they think about what they wrote. So I'm going to ask a question to all of you, to each one of you, and you have 5 minutes to answer that question. You're not obliged to use these 5 minutes, but you can use up to 5 minutes. Then I'm going to ask a single question to all of you, and we're going to leave the open mic so that those who want to answer this question can do so. An important information is that we need to be careful not to speak very fast. Alessandra had a good pace. I know that I speak a little bit faster. We have to um, reduce our pace, or else the translator is going to have a very hard time translating us. I'm going to invite first Jussara Bezerra to speak to us. Jussara already arrived. She's here with us. And I would like to ask you the following question. The reality of the students is usually a very important subject in projects of citizenship science. How to engage the topic and how to engage the students in school on a topic such as food health, food security, like the one that you have developed in your school, Jussara. Good morning, everyone. First of all, I would like to congratulate the organizers of this event and the organizers of this book. It is of utmost importance for the schools and the educators. Thank you very much for having me this morning or this afternoon, depending on the place where you are. My name is Jussara. I am 39 years old. I am a woman. I'm wearing glasses. I have long hair. I am in my place. So I have a painting in the background. This question reveals a lot of the potential of the work that I could develop with students, with high school students. It started from the reality of something that was happening. The school was changing the menu of the cafeteria, and the students were wasting food because they didn't understand the logics of the new menu. They didn't understand the damage that wasting food caused to the environment. Food waste is always treated culturally as a sin. You waste food because you don't understand how many people in the world are going through hunger. And I believe the great potential of the pedagogical work is identifying these problems. Many problems are identified by the students themselves, but the teachers can also problematize these situations with the students and have them collect data and discuss this data that is perceived so that they can research, analyze this data, and make decisions on the situation. It is a learning situation. So I was supported by citizenship science. I am a master's candidate in citizenship science, and I could develop my knowledge in the school space applying the knowledge that I acquired in my master's degree, carrying out data collection, data analysis, and production of knowledge. So reality is what brings meaning to learning. So the biggest contribution of this work was bringing this communication between what they perceive of reality and how they can change this reality using scientific knowledge.
Maravilha, Jussara. Obrigado.
Wonderful, Jussara. Thank you. When I listened to you speaking, I thought about three follow-up questions. And those who are watching us, not only guests who came here for this presentation, but the other writers who are here also and are going to be interviewed. If you have questions, you can write down your questions and you can ask the questions to the other authors later. But these are 5-minute rounds of questions, so we're going to go to the second author. Thank you very much, Jussara. Ronaldo, I have a question to you now. You are a gigantic partner of our hub. Since the beginning of the hub, you have always been very involved. You are an inspiration to all of us. Among other things, your text describes the process of building bridges between Brazil and the United Kingdom in science projects. So how can we bring experience of the United Kingdom to Brazil, avoiding the trap of Eurocentrism? Decolonization is one of our flags. So how can we avoid the trap of Eurocentrism? Hello, colleagues. Good morning and good afternoon, depending on where you are. It's always great to be here because I'm a fan of the STEM Hub. My name is Ronaldo Christofoletti. For those who can't see me, I am a white man with gray hair and gray beard. I wear glasses, and behind me, I have a scenario of things that show important things in my life. I have a plant that shows my connection to the environment. I have a globe that shows my connection to the world, and a painting that has an inspiration of the ocean, which is the area where I work. Arthur, getting your question, this have been 16 years of experience and an amazing partnership with the United Kingdom. And we have to think about building things together to avoid Eurocentrism. In a bilateral relationship, we have synergies and we have many things in common. We have potential to make science, which is the objective of all the countries. But we have differences, and we have in a partnership, even though we have the same objective, we have to acknowledge these social, cultural, economic differences and have the development that is relevant to each country. My story started in the sciences of the sea and then moved on to citizenship sciences. And we have to avoid repeating practices. We have to inspire ourselves and rebuild practices. Let's take the example of where it starts. It's a fact that some countries are more developed or have more advanced knowledge in certain area. In the sciences of the sea sciences, it's very clear that the United Kingdom has a lot more advanced scientific knowledge. 14 years ago, I started studying see sciences. And I had to start my journey in Brazil to get to the same point as the United Kingdom. At that moment, I couldn't take a significantly relevant question for the United Kingdom at the time and ask the same question in Brazil. Jussara talked about citizen science. We have already made a lot of advances. When we started the partnership program on citizen science with the United Kingdom, they already had a project for 4 years when we were just starting in Brazil. Then, with the support of British Council, we went there and we learned with what they were doing. Here in São Paulo, we started our citizen science for marine biodiversity program, but we did not repeat what they were doing. We started something that could be relevant for the Brazilian reality. We are inspired by what they did. We try not to make the same mistakes as they did, and we start our own project. When we adapt something that was working at a location and now they work at our location, the British colleagues start feeling interested in it. They see that some things are specific to the Brazilian culture. When it comes to citizen science, there are some details that need to be adapted. Now we have mutual respect, and Brazil is more advanced in some steps. Now in Brazil, we have some projects that are more advanced and they are inspired in an experience by an experience that has happened in Brazil for some years. So a way to avoid Eurocentrism is with exchange of knowledge horizontally, acknowledging that we have something in common, but adapting and respecting the local realities. The partners have to respect the differences among themselves. That's how we're going to avoid Eurocentrism. Amazing. Thank you very much, Ronaldo. Many questions that can be made as a follow-up question. Thank you very much. Your answer was inspiring. Now I'm going to invite Ana Carolina Gonzalez.
Ana, tudo bem?
Hello, Anna. I'm going to ask you the following question. What role could the museum education take in the teaching of sciences in Brazil? And how can we bring the student closer to the museum? Hello, good morning or good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Alessandra and Arthur, I would like to thank the team of British Council and King's College London who are involved in the development of STEM Education Hub. I'm very proud to be a collaborator of STEM Education Hub. I'm very proud to be part of the ebook and to be here in the virtual launch of the book. I hope it bears many fruit in the future. I am a white woman with brown eyes, blonde, long blonde hair, and I'm wearing a blue shirt. I'm wearing hoops on my ears. Behind me, I have a gray wall and a half of a brown door. This is a very inspiring question. I work at a science museum, the Museum of Life, At Fio Cruz, Brazil is an important international leader in the discussion and the development of a field that we call museum education. With this, I say that the museum that we defend is a museum that is educational in its mission, that is committed to education. In this aspect, we draw the attention to this convergence between schools and museums.
Museus são duas das mais
We
potentes.
recognize that schools and museums are two of the most powerful instances of social transformation, of course, with their own idiosyncrasies, conflicts, difficulties, but each one of them with a gigantic power of provoking transformations, building new knowledges from other people's knowledge. I believe that when we try to create this convergence, the whole is much bigger than the sum of the parts. And of course, museum education in its practical and theoretical aspects, but especially in its political aspects, is only possible when we are acknowledged by the educators, either from the schools or from informal places, in my case, from the museums themselves, because this appreciation and this acknowledgement is what allows educators from schools and educators from museums to plan activities together. And we know that learning happens throughout life. For sciences themselves and for their motivational aspect of building critical citizenship and scientific literacy, we have to think of learning as something that happens throughout life. When you see yourself in the context that values your interests, your previous knowledge, your motivations, where you are, what you are in contact with, what is your network, what's your anxieties, what issues impact your daily life. There's science in all of that. And when I recognize that, and when I start from these issues that are particular to discuss issues that are regional, international, global, that's when I unite the schools and the museums with the emancipatory perspective. So I believe that museum education and the education that happens in schools and universities are going towards a convergence when we're able to include contextualized sciences in the lives of students, teachers, elders, homeowners associations, churches. I'm talking about STEM education, but I'm also talking about social matters. Museum education can have a huge contribution to scientific education, and this goes through understanding scientific aspects that are part of our lives every day. And we can only build powerful activities and proposals when we have public policies that can value the educators that are leading this and that are helping us face inequalities that are found in a country like Brazil. But I think we can talk about this later in our chat. Thank you, Ana, very much. It was your answer was wonderful. Now let's move on to Janice. Janice, welcome.
Se conheceu antes, né?
I think we've never met before, right? We've never actually
we
seen each
haven't.
other like this.
No.
Thank you very much for being with us, talking to us from Jamaica. What time is it there?
It is now 8:30 in the morning in Jamaica.
Muito bem, poxa vida, então você teve que começar
Wow,
cedo.
so you needed to start your day early to be with us. It's 2 hours less than Brazil because here it's 10:30. So let's ask a question about your chapter. Do you think the technologies that you have worked a lot with can represent a big democratization to the access of scientific ideas?
Thank you, Arthur. Good afternoon for those who are in the UK, and good morning to everyone else, and depending on the time of day that you're connecting from. I am Janice Ansine, and I'm Senior Project Manager for Citizen Science at the Open University in Milton Keynes in the UK, which is where I normally work and reside. I'm currently joining you from Lucy, Hanover in Jamaica, as I'm here dealing with some family matters, and didn't want to miss joining with you today. So happy to be with you here. I'm really excited to be part of this launch of this ebook, which is an output of a collaboration, which creates a sort of bridge around a number of areas that I work in, and I'm also interested in and excited about, and also a key part of what we do at the Open University. For those who can't see me, I am a woman. I'm Black, British, Caribbean of Jamaican ancestry. I'm wearing red glasses, a necklace, and a leopard pattern top. As I mentioned, I normally live and work in the UK. I'm currently in Jamaica and joining you directly from there. Now, to answer your question, Arthur, basically, the Open University's mission is to be open to people, places, and ideas. And for those who know about what we do, technology is at the heart of how we do our STEM education and learning. In terms of the technologies that I've worked with over the years, my work combines the use of citizen science, practical science, and general STEM education in a way to engage people, learn, and be involved in scientific endeavors. So my focus is more on the engagement and facilitating that engagement through a range of technological tools. I think these tools, these types of tools that we create and utilize with the public and schools as part of this wider public are very useful in this whole idea of facilitating access to scientific ideas and democratization in terms of facilitating and enabling people to have that voice. Now, I should say that the pandemic has shown us even more what the impact of the use of technology can have in terms of the digital divide, but it has also opened up opportunities to enhance the use of technology for some groups that would not normally be able to access these sorts of tools and resources. And one of the things we do from the Open University is we facilitate the use of STEM learning through a wide range of STEM education tools that can be accessed online. For example, through our Open Science Lab, we have the use of different lab experiments and tools that we try to make available to a wide range of schools to allow that collaboration of and linking in and demonstration of scientific ideas. We take this and we implement projects across the world, in the UK, across Europe, and across the world to enable wider audiences to access our tools. And we work collaboratively with different partners to ensure that we're not just going in and sharing the tools, but we're also enhancing the skill set of these different people and these different groups, that they can then take on the initiative and do some of these activities themselves. So hopefully I've answered your question in a wide-ranging nutshell, Arthur, but just to say that I do believe that these technologies can enable great democratization and access to scientific ideas. However, we have to be aware of the digital divide and find ways and means of collaboration, etc., to deal with this. Thank you.
Obrigado, Janice. Eu acho que você
Thank you
sim.
very much, Janice. I think you did answer my question successfully and very gladly. I would like to ask follow-up questions later on. I believe my friends here would like to ask further questions about this as well. We're going to be able to ask each other questions later on, and after we have this 5-minute round of questions. Let's move on to Anita Benite, who's here with us. Hi, Anita. It's glad to see you again. I always love your hats.
Bom, Anita, deixa eu fazer a seguinte pergunta a você. O que a escola
And your
pode...
turbans as well. Anita, a question to you. What schools can do to stimulate girls, especially Black girls, to feel interested in scientific experimentation? Good morning to everyone who's here. I am a Black woman with the fair skin. I am using I'm using clothes that is typical from my religion. It's an ejá and not a hat, Arthur. I can give you one as a gift. And behind me, I have a painting. About the engagement of girls, especially Black girls, I think it's about time that we review the curricula of science, especially a presentation of a Black science, a science that propagates still a binary separation, a dual logic on bodies, scientific knowledge, and other types of realities. It's necessary to interfere in this logics of curricula that is monochromatic and excluding. A strategy to be utilized, for example, could be the approach of sciences themselves, the world of labor, the appearance of societies, how it does affect the science that we teach. I also believe that we need to create locations that favor the presentation of those sciences. We need to talk about the ethno-racial relationships. We need to make clear the identities in the educational practices, and they are going to happen inside and outside the school space. When we restrict the teaching of sciences to the consensus that are agreed upon in a symbolical language, we are omitting all of the potential of dealing with the rhetoric of our own lives. It is possible to associate the nature of the science that we associate to more welcoming practices, to issues that are more urgent in the society, creating bonds and between the theory and the social challenges that exist in our social political existence. We need to give protagonism to the Black scientists in the scientific world. We need to read Black scientists. We need to know what they do as a strategy, not only of engagement of these girls, especially Black girls, but a strategy of appreciation of the science that is produced in a national context. It's important that we approach themes that are part of the social life of Black women and girls, which are a majority in the public schools of Brazil, but they are also the basis of the social pyramid that we have. I think this is a path. It's the main path to contest the curricula. And we also need to include, as I said, productions by Black women. We need to invite Black women to be professors at universities as an example of the development and production of our scientific knowledge.
Obrigado, Anita. Curiosamente, não é? Você veja.
Thank you, Anita. When I said that you were wearing a hat, this is a very Eurocentric vocabulary. We know the vocabulary, the Eurocentric vocabulary, even by being Brazilian. I ask you, I'm sorry, I ask you forgiveness. No problem at all. Let's go back to a very important topic. If you don't know Anita's work, it's very inspiring. Work. Anita's work is published in many languages, and everybody talks about her work with a lot of passion.
Olá, Diana, tudo bem?
Diana just joined as well. Hello, Diana. Good to see you. I'm so glad that you could join us. Welcome to our launch. You lost the beginning of our conversation. We thanked everybody, including you. Thank you very much for the publication of this book. I'm asking a direct question to every one of the authors, and then we're going to have an open question where everyone could answer. A question directed to you is, to what extent the online platforms for science studies can help the dynamics of the classes? First of all, thank you very much for the invitation. I'm honored to be here today next to these brilliant researchers. If you cannot see me, I am a white person. I'm wearing a white shirt. And that's it, basically. Answering your question, if the online platforms can help the dynamics of the classes, I have a very rich testimony on this because in my master's thesis, I worked with a digital platform that includes projects of citizen science. And I had the opportunity to implement this in my own practice. It is important to analyze that we had a very rich result related to the engagement of the students with science. They were able to empower themselves with science somehow, and that was explicit in the results. The students were extremely motivated and engaged by knowing that they can make science. They were surprised because they collaborated with the research that's from NASA. NASA developed a survey of citizen science, and any person from any place in the world could take part in the survey. My 12 students took part in the survey, and they were charmed with the result. And they asked me, well, NASA is going to contact us to say thank you. Could we talk to them? Of course, we didn't directly contact NASA via telephone, but at the platform, there is a place where you can talk. There's a channel where you can talk to the researchers responsible for the survey. You have a direct contact with the researchers via a chat, and that charmed the student. Science was a little demystified in this engagement process through a project of citizen science. So the digital platforms can be used to approximate the student and the science, especially when it is citizen science. The regular population, the population who is not scientists, the students, can have contact with science in a real way. Platforms of this kind, they promote this kind of interaction. So from my standpoint, I feel like it is something very rich, and I saw results of this in my practice. Thank you very much. Is it called Zoo Universe? ZOO Universe? I'm going to type it in on the chat so that those who are watching can get to know the name. Zooniverse, ZOO Universe. We're going to visit this platform to get to know a little bit more about it. I think I asked questions to everyone, right? If there's anyone missing, you please let me know.
Certo, ok. Dado o tempo, eu vou ter que fazer o
Due
seguinte.
to our time restrictions, I'm going to ask a question now to everyone, and please feel free to answer. If you don't volunteer to answer, I'm going to volunteer someone. So please volunteer to answer. And we're going to take questions later from the audience. So the question is, how do you think we can direct the natural curiosity of children to scientific learning, taking into account the plurality of knowledge and the need of inclusion, with the democratization of knowledge and the perspective of a less unequal world? So how can we make pedagogical issues more inclusive and more democratic, and at the same time feed children's curiosity for scientific knowledge? How can we take care of these two aspects of knowledge at the same time? Having a more democratic and inclusive education, but also directing our children's curiosity toward STEM education in the classrooms. Having them more interested in science, but also practicing an inclusive and democratic education. Wouldn't having a more inclusive education naturally bringing a bigger interest in science? I think your answers actually will include a little bit of what you already said, or you can also talk about different things. When a teacher walks into the classroom, how can this teacher transform this learning environment in a more motivating environment, and having an education that is more tolerant, that embraces diversity, appreciates the diversity of the world when it comes to ethnicities, when it comes to genders?
No tocante ao ensino de ciências em particular. Alguém gostaria de começar?
Does anybody want to answer? I saw some people nodding. Does anybody have anything to say about that? I can start. Thank you, Anita. Science in itself is dynamic. It is living. It is made by men and women all over the world. Even before the inauguration of modernity, what we can see as a prototype which we can see as a prototype of modern science, the society was already organizing itself. It is made in collaborative processes, and this by itself already attracts children. I think the biggest problem is when we go to the classroom with the projects that the society already dealt with in its transformation, we take to the classroom a very poor version of the society. We have a policy of rank, we have meritocracy, and that push the children and the adolescents away from the nature of science. If we are able to resume a science that is a model and that is what happens in the real world, if we don't take and put science in a box, this will change the dynamics of the classroom. And we don't have to put a lot of effort into treating and approaching inclusion in science, because science reproduces the world itself, and the world is diverse. We're talking about the same thing. We're talking about science and the world, science and inclusion, science and diversity. We always talk so passionately about our research and about what we do, and why, when we go to the classroom, everything becomes so poor, everything becomes so impoverished. That is what we have to deal with now. We have to get out of this impoverished space, and we have to take this passion to the classroom. That's why we're looking for other solutions and other alternatives. And if we take the same passion to the classroom, I think the environment is going to change. Thank you, Anna. Anybody else would like to contribute? Can I continue? Please do so. Anna's speech does not only please me, but I would like to ratify her speech and say that it has to be like this. She brought 2 points related to the representativeness of the scientific speech. The construction of the narratives, which are the narratives that we contemplate, the authors of knowledge, and talking about the contribution of my field of research, I would like to talk about the citizen science that predicts democratization, participation, and the engagement of the citizens in the construction of this science. It is part of the open sciences movement, and when it is applied to the education, citizen science and teaching seems like a very interesting strategy. We expand the curriculum to a practical perspective the student is able to collect data and work with the data that he himself or she herself is going to survey, and they are going to be able to make decisions based on scientific data and knowledge that is applicable to a group based on what they themselves could interact with. So I would like to shed a light here on citizen science as a strategy for teaching. Thank you, Jussara. I just have one comment before the next person answers the question. There is a colleague of mine who works with emotions in science learning, and we have made a few projects on curriculum. There are some issues on racism and some gender issues. This is not a new project he has. He has developed this project in the 1980s. His name is Brian Matthews. He is a co-author with me on an article that we published last year. When he published in the 1980s, he had very little attention to his work. Nobody was interested in what he published. And now in the 21st century, there was a lot of attention to his work because of issues of authoritarianism and racism. He brought back some socio-emotional issues in the teaching of science, and I learned a lot about with him. And he mentions that working with emotions when children work in groups, taking that into consideration, discussing that democratically, understanding that the work is added, the work in group is added, that we don't work individually. That was a huge accomplishment for me. We're talking here about democratization and building different skill sets. As Anita said, this educational model is still very individualized. It's very focused on the consensus. It's not focused on the problematization. It's very anti-Freudian, this kind of model, and giving room to this reflection upon who dominates the conversation, which ideas are being excluded without giving the proper attention, if this has a relationship with the gender, if this has a relationship with the race. This seems to me as a promising path regarding what we have discussed here. Would anybody else like to make a comment? Is anybody with the with their hands raised?
I would like to make a comment, Arthur. It's very interesting to hear the two speakers what they mentioned earlier, because some of this is at the heart of what some of the things that I'm involved in at the Open University in terms of the types of projects that we have. And I'm going to quickly mention two that might be of interest. So we have a major citizen science platform called ispotnature.org, which the main ethos of it is to help people identify nature, but at the same time build their identification skills. It's open to anyone to use. We have a particular remit where schools and students can get involved. What we do try to do as well is to create educational resources around this. One of the key things is to equip the teachers with the skills to enable them to facilitate students' learning, to make that valid contribution. So one of the projects that iSpot is associated with is a European project called Cost per Cloud. And within that project, we have been working directly with teachers in Greece through our partner in Greece, through the NKUA, the university in Athens. And they've been doing bespoke teacher training, teacher sessions, equipping them with the skills to use what we call citizen observatories, and iSpot is one of these observatories that we're promoting, as well as others focused on biodiversity, like iSpot, and others focused on environmental science. And the key here is that we're creating a whole range of tools and resources that will be available to other teachers. So we're creating these scenarios and these tools and these resources that others can then use to equip them to do similar things with case studies, examples, and so on. That's one sort of scenario where we're trying to equip people by giving them the skills and the tools that can enable them to facilitate this type of learning in the classroom. Another example of a project that I'm involved in is one where we're working with the Ministry of Education in Ghana and teachers there, where we're equipping them with practical science tools, particularly for senior high school students. And in terms of what Anita was saying earlier, we have a focus on enabling particularly girls to get involved in science. So this initiative involves us working collaboratively. It's a process of co-designing these resources. We're not just going in what we've done from the OU, we're working collaboratively to redevelop these tools within the Ghanaian context, working closely with the teachers behind the scenes. And this has been an amazing experience, just working with the teachers. We've been challenged a bit by COVID, but that has brought out enhanced things, for example, how we work collaboratively. But just two quick examples of how we're doing this on the ground that can hopefully be of use. And we are making this information available. Some of it's already available publicly, and I'll make some of these links, web links, available for you to view should they be interested. Thank you.
Que bom. Janice,
Very nice. Janice, could you share the link for this material, for these projects that you just mentioned? Could you share that on the chat?
Doing that now, thank you.
Ótimo, obrigado. Legal.
Thank you very much.
Claro, já era esperado, não é, gente, que muito do que vocês todos iriam falar ia haver uma...
We expected that many things that you would mention would kind of overlap.
Claro que a gente vê aqui a Janice falando e como é que isso dialoga claramente com...
It's very nice to listen to what Janice said and how it can relate to what Anita said and what also Jussara said. I would like to agree with all of the friends that just mentioned before. This educational format needs to be a bottom-up discussion and not such a top-down discussion. The children are naturally curious. We decide which activities the children are supposed to do, and they have to learn from this activity. Science has to involve everyone. So why don't we sit down with the kids and we ask them, what is their curiosity? And from their curiosity, we build a path with them. So why can't we bring traditional knowledge to them from a process that is led and whose protagonist is the children's curiosity? We shouldn't be the only ones who decide what path we're going to take. We have a project that starts with a very vulnerable community. So when we did the first meeting, we decided to build together a project on marine biodiversity.
Eles falaram, olha, a gente vive aqui num lugar, e veja que eles é de uma forma muito ingênua, não é de uma visão crítica que os outros têm. Tem muito plástico. Por que tem tanto plástico aqui?
And they said, the students, they were curious about having a lot of plastic in a river close to the region where they work. So we built a project upon one of their curiosities. Much more than giving them questions, we should give them answers.
E eles nos ensinam de volta. Eu acho que aí
they should build knowledge upon their curiosities, and they should give us this knowledge back. They should be the protagonists of this process. Thank you very much, Ronaldo. I agree with you. I think this is very important. I met recently a school in São Paulo called Hub School. I was very curious to see what they did to get to know their activities, and I was happily surprised. This school is completely focused on education built on projects. They don't have any kinds of regular classes, and this opens up possibilities for a very different education than the ones that we are used to. Ana Carolina has her hand raised, and she wants to speak as well. It is such a great privilege to listen to you and hear from you and think about all these challenges. I'm going to be inspired by everything that was said, and that also reflects on my practices of museum education. There's a question here from the audience by Camilo Gilelis, and he says that maybe the greatest point is not how to stimulate curiosity, but how not to miss this native curiosity of people. I'm going to bring some of the examples that I have been through, because I think sometimes what we live and what we feel make a difference in our worldviews. And you can see that it is very connected to everything that is mentioned here. When we're very concerned about delivering ready answers in a closed box without knowing what were the origins of the question, what were the historical motivations that led to that question, what were all the wrong projects that led to that right project,
não neutros, como já foi dito também, e o quanto a gente precisa
and
contextualizar
how much we have to contextualize all of that
nesse desenvolvimento, na manutenção de uma curiosidade que deveria ser perene. Então, eu vou dois
I'm
exemplos.
going to give two examples that are going to link all of that. In the Museum of Life, we had an activity. It was a theater play based on a comic strip from the beginning of the 20th century. It was there were three skeletons that were talking about a disease from the beginning of the 20th century. And we developed an activity with the audience based on that comic, and our invitation was that those classes that would visit us would draw their own comics, but would substitute the diseases from the 20th century with diseases that we have now. Fio Cruz, the Osvaldo Cruz Foundation, is located in one of the worst neighborhoods of Rio de Janeiro, so this is our main audience. So we would invite those students to draw their own their own comic strips, and we had a lot of aspects, always had a lot of aspects related to violence and incorrect disposal of garbage and incorrect waste management. I was conducting this activity, and there was a group that didn't want to draw and they didn't want to take part in that activity. And those people have a lot of history of oppression. And I sat down to try to talk to them and try to understand why that was not interesting. That space of free expression was not being used. And the children would say, I don't like to draw. I don't like that art thing. And I told them, if you think about another way of talking to us about the place where you live. And the guy said, instead of drawing, can I write a rap song? And I said, of course. This is a space for free expression. It's a space where you can feel free to say what you want the way you want it. And he wrote a rap song. We invite him to sing the rap song, and he taught us a class about the terrible quality of water where he lives and how it impacted the health of his family. So inside the Science Museum, he taught us a class about water quality and absence of public policies in a rap song. So when you give voice to children, we change this power position, and maybe we can let them make a difference. Thank you, Ana. I'm very curious to look at this rap lyrics. If you still have the lyrics, please send it to us. Regarding the time, now it's time to for the 10 minutes of questions from the audience. Here on the chat, we already have some questions that were sent from the audience. So let's go to the last 10 minutes. There is a question by Alessandra. I am going to read the question here. If you want to add, I can ask the question out loud. Yes, go ahead, Alessandra. The British Council, as I said in the beginning, works with many fields of international collaboration. One of them is STEM education. And we are also open for STEAM education, including arts. And another agenda that is very important for a British Council, not only in Brazil, but everywhere, is the international connections between schools and between researchers and between researcher and institutions. Using the title of the publication, Connections Between Brazil and the United Kingdom, we are now creating a project called STEAM Clubs, which are clubs of science, technology, arts, engineering, and math at schools, connecting schools that have clubs of this kind or are interested in having clubs to engage students in all these STEAM disciplines. And we have a dilemma, which is how this collaboration is going to happen. If not through English as a lingua franca. But in Brazil specifically, we know that we have a big challenge. In 2018, we carried out a very significant survey that showed that less than 10% of the people interviewed, including the youth, do not speak English. I'm sorry, less than 10% speak English in Brazil. So we are worried about excluding many people in this collaboration. The British schools are very interested in this collaboration. They're very excited in exchanging experiences with Brazilian schools about climate change, and they are looking in their communities who speaks Portuguese to do this exchange with the Brazilian schools. The reaction of the Brazilian schools is fear, how they're going to communicate with the British schools because almost nobody speaks English. So I would like to bring this issue to you. And I would like to ask for tips. How can we bring these schools closer? This is for basic education, primary education. We don't want this suggestion to be neo-colonialist, and we don't want this to be excluding. We want this to include the Brazilian school community in agendas that are international and global, like climate change. And we want to open the school doors to the world. So if anybody has suggestions on how to do this, would anybody like to comment? It's actually a request for comments. It's a cry for help. Alessandra, I would like to congratulate you for the initiative. First of all, I felt very excited listening to what you were saying. It is a huge challenge indeed. And why don't we listen to the schools in both countries, and why don't we suggest a 50-50? So why don't we ask them if they only can do this in Portuguese, or if they're comfortable in English, or both? English is a universal language, but nowadays in such a diverse world, so there probably is schools in the United Kingdom where they want to live this experience of listening to another language, or maybe trying to learn another language, or listening to a translator. They can grow in citizenship and globalization while living the experience of communicating in a different language, maybe with a translator. And maybe this motivates them, and that we could create a balance. I would like to speak a little as well.
Ale, eu acho que essa...
Ale, I think your anxiety says a lot of these problems that we are dealing with here. If we look at Portuguese and the size of Brazil, we have many different Portugueses being spoken in different parts of Brazil. Also, there's a lot of linguistic prejudice in recognizing that the Portuguese language is only the one that is spoken in formal language. We know that language is identity, language is culture, language is the power of the people. So when we make constructions and linguistic innovations in your speech, you are building your territory, you are saying that you recognize yourself. So besides the questions that have to do with the challenge of Portuguese and English, we have to acknowledge the immense challenge that is the Portuguese language. I want to give you ideas and have we try to move forward in the development of these ideas. Arthur is from a British college, so I don't know to what extent, in your perspective, we could maybe have universities as mediators between British schools and Brazilian schools. Arthur is part of a Center of Brazilian Studies at a British university, and probably several of the cultural studies involve linguistic aspects. Last year, I did a doctorate in England within a language and literature department because my advisor is Portuguese, and maybe these students have as a mandatory internship to go to a Portuguese speaking country. They have Portuguese as a native language. They are in a language and literature college. And as part of their credits, the university has an agreement that these students have to leave England and they have to go to a Portuguese speaking country to do an immersion in the language. So I see possibilities of expanding the dialogue because while you were speaking, I could see that these students could come to Brazilian schools, building this bridge between the United Kingdom and Brazil, but using schools to do their immersion programs in this exchange. While I was there, my advisor showed the experience of a British student that went to an NGO in Bahia. And she tried to understand not only the accent, but the idioms. And she incorporated that in her learning of Portuguese. So maybe we could look at the universities. Many British universities have centers of Brazilian studies or language and literature colleges that use Portuguese as a mediator between Brazilian schools and British schools. You want to give more work to us. We already are overworked and you want to bring more work, but this is a great idea. We're going to try to do this. I hope that you can be part of our next meetings of the STEM Education Hub. We're going to bring you closer so that we can develop these ideas. I think it's very interesting. I think Alessandra also thinks these ideas interesting. Of course, we need workforce. So I would like you to organize this with us. I'm a little bit concerned with time because we have 5 minutes left. I know that we could be here for an hour and a half more, but I would like to ask you if you have any question to anyone directly. Let's see if we have any questions here on the chat. Don't be shy. If you have no questions, I'm going to ask a question. Very quick question to Jussara. You are the one that spoke.
Enquanto você falava, Jussara, sobre trazer a realidade dos
While you were speaking about bringing the students' realities,
para a sala de aula, o que me
and you were talking about waste management in one of your projects,
e trazer a
you
realidade
reminded me of Paulo Freire talking about bringing the reality of children to the classroom.
trabalho. Qual foi o impacto que você viu até agora
In your work, what was the impact that you have seen so far in the possibility of reducing social injustices in children's lives?
ou ainda
Have you seen some impact, or is it still too early to notice this?
Obrigada pela sua pergunta.
Thank you for your question. Excellent question.
Porque, de fato, é o que a gente pensa, né? O que a gente busca como
It is, in
educação,
fact, what we are searching for
as
with education, an education that transforms the students' lives. And the biggest challenge is the monitoring, long-term monitoring. This is what brings great transformations in long term, but we cannot look concretely at the daily figures and the daily data at school, how they started behaving regarding waste. At the time, I could apply the monitoring. At the time, we applied the form and questionnaire on their perception on the subject. I believe that concretely on their daily lives, they could demonstrate what this knowledge brought in terms of change for them. They stopped wasting food. They took this knowledge to their household. They brought some comments from their father and their mother. They said, "Teacher, now my mother's trying to reduce the amount of food that's wasted. I can see this in the waste basket at my home. This is something tangible. What we cannot perceive in terms of potential of transformation and change is that we cannot see the small changes that actually are big in this daily life. We cannot see how they apply this in their daily life with their family, in their community. We can only see that at a school space. We can only see how they apply it at the school space. That is the only place that we can see their behavior, what they have absorbed, and what they're learning in terms of knowledge.
é lógico. E só lembrando, a gente trabalha
Just to remember, we work at schools, at universities, we work with education. We always have to remember that the biggest social transformer that exists, I do believe in that, but there's a lot of people that also wrote about that. The biggest social transformer is school. The school is the reflection of society. A few years from now, the society that where we live to now, where we live today, is a reflection of the school that we had a few years ago. We talked today about meritocracy, this education that is focused only for the individualized benefit, for the selfish benefit. This reflects in the way that we are going to act and reflect further ahead. We're going to work with children that are 8, 12, 16 years old, and our education is going to have an impact on the way that they are going to relate to people in the future. I would like to thank here everyone. André Michelazzi, who's in the background, if you want to say something. André has helped the hub very much. I would like to thank Alessandra and the team of British Council. I would like to thank the interpreter who has been interpreting for us today. I would like to thank all of the speakers who have been with us today. I would like to remind you that this video is going to be made available on YouTube and also on our website if you want to watch later. I would like to pass the floor to Alessandra to finish this workshop today. If you want to say something else before we say goodbye, please feel free to do so.
Obrigada, Arthur.
Thank you, Arthur.
Na verdade, tenho só a acrescentar os
Actually, I would just like to add our thank yous by British Council. It's always a great pleasure to be at the events of STEM Education Hub. It is a partnership that
colaborativo,
wants to be a collaborative space
de colaboração internacional.
and a space of international collaboration between Brazil and the United Kingdom. So I thank the presence of everyone. Thank you all who are watching us. Thank you for the time. It is a privilege to be with you, to have been with you. Janice, would you like to say a few words before we finish?
Thank you. During the talks, one of our projects that we have really resonated, because we've been working with the Institute for Research in Schools in the UK, which is a body that does creates examples for students to get engaged in actual scientific research. And they've used our platform for gathering information and data about trees, treezilla.org, or a monster map of trees, which also calculates ecosystem service value of trees. And one really, really useful example was a school a girls' school where the students use treezilla to map trees on the school grounds. And they're using this to start an ongoing project for further monitoring and evaluation of the scientific input within the school grounds. They're using this as a tool, not only for their own education, but also to monitor the school grounds and also use this to implement changes in how certain things are done in the school environment. But it's just creating these tools and making them available to make the job as easy as possible for teachers to do. We're here to help. So do get in touch. Thank you.
Obrigado, Janice.
Thank you very much, Janice. If nobody else has anything else to say, we're going to finish now. It's wonderful to listen to all of you. I expect from this meeting other collaborations in the near future, other events within the hub, or with maybe papers or international projects. Please take part in our events, our other events. We're going to have meetings and we're going to invite you. And please continue being our partners, because we don't exist without you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Marcela, for the organization from Punto. Thank you to our interpreter. And thank you to our great friends from British Council. And thank you, Andre. Thank you, everyone. Goodbye and have a good day.